If you do any prospecting with LinkedIn, you have got to go get set up with Surf. That's SURFE. It's a tool you can use to add new contacts to your CRM system directly from LinkedIn in seconds. I'm using it every single day. I add contacts, follow my deals, keep track of notes, and it ends up saving me a bunch of time on prospecting and outreach, which means I can spend more time moving my deals along. The data is always 100% accurate since I don't have to copy and paste all the fields over from each and every contact that I want to put in my CRM. Instead, Surf does that all automatically with just one click in about 60 seconds. The team over at Surf has put together a very special offer for fans of sales players. There's a link down in the show notes, and you can use the promo code JWSurf5. Don't forget the E at the end of Surf. That's JWSurf5 for 5% off your first year. Don't spend another minute doing things manually. Go get set up with Surf. Hello, everyone. We have yet another very exciting guest on the program today. His name is Andy Cabasso, and Andy is the co-founder of a tech startup called Postaga. And Postaga does AI-assisted outreach. In the episode, we actually get into how he came up with the idea, as well as how he went about approaching the first round of customers for the product, and a number of other interesting topics like time management, careers, and standing out from all of the noise that's out there in the software industry. Something super interesting about Andy is he actually started his first company while he was still in law school. He pivoted his whole career, ended up selling that company, and used those proceeds to start Postaga. So very interesting story. And with that, welcome Andy to the show. All right, and we're live. Andy, welcome to the SaaS Sales Players. How you doing?
I'm good, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I was just telling you off air that where I like to typically start these interviews is with just a bit of an introduction about you, how you got into the tech business, and then anything else you care to share about your background and your career.
Sure. So I kind of have a weird path that got me to where I am and doing sales and startups and everything like that. So I studied business in undergrad and then went straight through to law school. I graduated undergrad in 09, which was a bad time to be graduating undergrad. And I, at the kind of advice of some mentors I had, law school would be the best use of my talents and skill set. And in law school, I realized that I did not want to be practicing law. So I started kind of a side hustle of one thing that I noticed when I was in law school is most law firms that I was applying to work jobs at that most of them didn't want to work at, they all had really bad websites and a poor internet presence. And so I started a side business of web design and digital marketing for law firms. And I did a good enough job with our SEO and marketing that it kind of picked up. And the first person I was able to hire was a salesperson. And then we grew this agency. And then it got acquired by a larger company in our market, which was legal space. And so a larger legal tech company acquired our agency. And then after my commitment ended with the acquiring company, I moved on to start Postaga, which is another tech company that helps with cold outreach.
Awesome. So really quickly, I want to, just because it's interesting to me. So a lot of my listeners probably don't know this, but I took the LSAT in undergrad as well. And I was in school a little bit after you. And it was just a tough time and a scary time to be thinking about starting a career when they're, right in the middle of the Great Recession.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how far into law school were you when you just made the decision to sort of cut your losses? It looks like you got the degree, or it sounds like you got the degree, but at what point did you kind of just mentally resign from being an attorney?
So when I was in law school, I think one of the things that I became very acutely aware of is that if you end up going to work at a big prestigious law firm, which is what most people want who are not going the public interest route, is you make great money, but your productivity is measured by billable hours. And so
Right.
if I'm really good at Excel or some other productivity tools that can help me save time, or I'm better at researching things, that's great and all, but I'm still like, my goal is to spend more time on a project. And I, as as someone with like an entrepreneurial bent, I was constantly looking for ways to save me time and be more productive. And
Right.
that wasn't really what I was interested in particular. And so I did graduate law school. I passed the bar exam. I am a licensed lawyer here in New York, although I'm not
Wow.
actively practicing. But that, yeah, I guess the real benefit of being a licensed lawyer here is that family will often ask me for legal advice, and friends will ask me about legal advice. So that's fun.
Are you your own general counsel or house counsel for Postaga, or do you outsource that?
So for Postaga and my last agency, I mean, I can handle pretty routine sort of legal things, but when we got acquired, for example, I'm not an M&A lawyer. I don't have that background,
Right.
and given, sums of money, I didn't want to make a mistake and then be like, oh, well, I saved a couple $1,000s by doing it myself, and
Right.
then made a huge mistake in the long run. So for big things like M&A, really M&A and funding, I'll always hire a lawyer for.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense and super interesting. Yeah, I decided I wasn't going to be an attorney right after I got my LSAT score back, and then I had to start thinking about alternatives. So another question I have, and I know you probably didn't come on here wanting to talk all about your legal career,
Happy
but a
to.
lot a lot of my listeners are transitioning into SaaS or tech from other professions. And maybe some of those
Yeah.
folks are coming from the legal profession or finance or real estate or hospitality.
Mhm.
What are a few things that, you learned as a student of the law that you've taken with you into a business or an entrepreneurship or a tech career that might've given you some kind of edge? I'm just always curious. And I think the exercise
Mhm.
here for the listeners is, whatever your background is. And I know my background before I got into tech was, a little bit of financial services and customer service. How can you bring those things into, entrepreneurship or into the tech business? So I'm curious what things you took away from law school that might've helped you in what you're doing now.
So I think one thing that that law prepares you for, like, was one thing that can be at odds with entrepreneurship, is a sort of risk averse mentality, and trying to plan out for all contingencies. So yeah, law is very risk averse because in the law you see every bad situation that can happen, from from not having a comma in the right place in a contract to like issues like that. But with kind of being like going down an entrepreneurial path, but I think it was best helpful for, like, in the legal career preparation, was critical thinking, really, like being able to take a look at a situation and analyze it. Now, that all being said, that's a would if you could do it all over again, right? Like, would you spend all that time and effort in going through law school to be a lawyer to then transition careers? Who knows? I am here where I am today because of the path that I have chosen. So I can't, no matter what, I can't be thinking back on what would I do differently. But
Yeah.
that being said, I talk with a lot of people who are looking into changing careers, and the thing that I could say, like, it is probably most helpful when you're looking to transition into a different field, is just be incredibly curious. Try to learn as much as you possibly can. Be awkward and reach out to people cold who are more established in the field that you want to be in, to do informational interviews, pick their brain, see what it's really like in that field, what the day-to-day is like, what things you should be thinking about more that you don't know. And so, like, a few people in legal have reached out to me saying, I want to be in marketing. And so I give them advice to like, well, here are the things that you want to be thinking about if you want to go to an agency or an in-house marketing role. Here are the typical career paths that you can have as options. I'm happy to look at your resume and give you feedback on that and tell you what someone in marketing is going to say when they look at your resume. But
Right.
I think the best thing you could do is reach out to people who are more established in the field. And a lot of like people are generally very nice and willing to help someone who's looking to break into a new field, because a lot of industries, they're small communities, and in the future they may run into you, you may run into them, and yeah, people are often happy to share their expertise. Like I love going on podcasts and talking about
Yeah.
things that I know, and everyone loves listening to podcasts and hearing new ideas and taking them down and taking them forward. And so, yeah, I think the best thing I would say is if you're looking to enter a new profession, learn as much as you can, learn from people who are more established, and yeah, build your experience there.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And one of the themes that I talk about a lot on the show that I think is something that makes me unique as a professional and a business person. And I'm sure you'd agree with this. And I'm sure you'd agree most people that enter the legal profession have this same quality, is curiosity. You have to be a little bit curious. I mean, I think you probably couldn't be a very good lawyer if you weren't at least curious about the precedent behind a case or something like that. And I think sales and business and entrepreneurship, it's the same muscle, which is you've got to be curious why people buy something, or you got to be curious why someone becomes a lead, or why a piece of code can make something more productive. So I think what you're hitting on is definitely really interesting to the audience, and something that I did a lot early in my career was I reached out to people. Even when I was considering the option of being an attorney, I went and shadowed a bankruptcy attorney here locally, and he was happy to let me sit and look over his shoulder for 7 hours, which was crazy. And I think
Which is why you did not go to become a bankruptcy attorney. I've done some bankruptcy work.
Yeah.
It's a real slog.
It is. Yeah. And, I did the same thing for a dentist, and in my tech and SaaS career, I've done it a lot of times for, entrepreneurs. I talked about on a recent episode that I joined a startup in Austin, and I sat next to the CEO. And that was probably one of the most important career opportunities that I had, was shoulder to shoulder with a guy who had already taken another company public and just had some amazing amount of wisdom on how to bring enterprise customers on board. And, in 6 months of sitting shoulder to shoulder with that individual, I probably leveled up 5 years in some ways. At least that's how I think about it. So I think you're exactly right. Reaching out, making those network connections really helps you to kind of level up.
Yeah, and I know that it can like feel awkward if you're like, I have nothing of value to provide, and so I'm reaching out on LinkedIn to this other person who is the CEO of a company, and worst case, they don't respond, and that's it. They get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, they don't respond, that's fine, you move on. But best case, they can give you some guidance and trajectory and potentially help save you a bunch of time from making the wrong mistakes and pursuing the wrong things. Like, yeah, someone reached out to me and we had a conversation, and they were like, here's what I'm working on right now, and this is what I'm interested in. And I was frank about, well, here is what is going to happen if you go down this path. You might get pigeonholed in this particular area, which is very competitive. You have a great background. Here's what I think would help you be more competitive and stand out and provide you some good career opportunities. So yeah, like with starting and running a business and growing a business, knowing from people who are more experienced, who have done the work themselves, it can help you avoid making those same mistakes.
Absolutely. So tell us about how you got the idea for Postaga. Actually, you know what, before you get into the genesis or the how, or how you got the idea anyway, tell us about Postaga. What's the sort of value proposition, and what makes it different than some of the other outreach tools in the marketplace?
Sure. So yeah, Postaga is a cold outreach platform that handles basically the full scope of doing cold email outreach, from prospecting to find websites, businesses, journalists that you want to connect with, finds their contact information, and then builds and sends personalized email sequences to them. Now, if you're doing cold outreach for sales, for example, there are a ton of tools that people are using for cold outreach. Where Postaga stands out is that Postaga really does the full spectrum of outreach. So instead of you needing to source your leads, scour LinkedIn, spend hours and hours doing all of that, and then find emails and drop them into your email software, Postaga does all of it in one app. So Postaga will help you prospect to find the right people, and then using some of our own AI, look through LinkedIn and find the right contact people at the company, so you don't have to do it manually, and then build and send personalized pitches. So basically, you don't have to spend all of that time that would otherwise cost you hours and hours to do.
Yeah, I've used a lot of the automation or outreach tools over the course of my tech career, and Outreach and SalesLoft come to mind. HubSpot, of course, has a sequencing or an outreach tool now. Do you guys, can you build a sequence of outreach, or is it focused more on the gathering of? So you can do a sequence, and then it also brings in the contacts data, which I don't know how far along Outreach or SalesLoft are on that front. I think you've got to use multiple systems in order to bring in lead data to something like Outreach.
Yeah, a lot of the tools are really meant to work in tandem. Like you figure out your prospecting, you build your lists from Built With or whatever your sources are, then you get a list with email addresses that you figure out somehow, and then import those contacts into our platform. We figured, like, since this is a pretty standard process that mostly a standard process that everyone's doing, let's just bring it all under one roof and integrate some AI to save you time with the prospecting, and do it all at once.
So tell us about how you got the idea, and I imagine at some point you looked at the addressable market for this and said, wow, there's a lot of widgets out there. There's a lot of software, very well-funded companies out there doing something similar enough. But you've obviously found sort of your value and your differentiators. But tell us, sort of how you got the idea for this and how you approached that mountain of, okay, we're going to be going up against some very big names in the SaaS business with this idea, and that, it may initially not be responded to well by prospects. Walk us through some of that headspace.
So the original idea kind of came about from running a digital agency. People who are doing link building, which is a part of SEO, which involves cold outreach to websites to pitch them to link to your content to help it rank better in search. That's not very specifically sales related, but the process, the workflow is very similar in that it involves prospecting, finding contacts and emails, and then building and sending an outreach sequence that's tailored to each individual contact. And so we saw the same issues kind of in that space, where there weren't really any all-in-one tools that did prospecting and contact finding and sending emails. And so we kind of, like, our very first version of Postaga was specifically for outreach for link building and SEO. And then as we spoke with some of our customers, they were using Postaga in ways that we had not anticipated, in particular, like sales outreach. And so we kind of, after speaking to the users and realizing, wow, the workflows are very similar, we added features that are more sales oriented.
Oh, interesting. And how did you go about approaching the first round of prospects? And I imagine at this point you've got a handful of customers. How did you go about sort of narrowing down that niche of who to reach out to, and what was your process?
Yeah. So the initial prospects for I guess the earliest users we had were our beta users, where we were testing out the platform, and I was using its prospecting capabilities to find particularly agencies. And so I would search basically digital agencies in different cities all around the United States, the UK, basically English speaking countries, and just cold reach out to them saying, like, with a pitch to the effect of, hey, I've got this link building tool that's in beta right now, and I'm looking to get feedback from established agencies like yourselves. Happy to give you free use while we're in beta if you could give us some feedback. And it we got a lot of good responses from that. It helped shape the direction of our product, and a bunch of them became paying users. And then as we launched our product out of beta, we launched on Product Hunt, where we ended up being #1 for the day on Product Hunt, #2 for the week. And from there, we got a lot of notice from that. And as part of the growth phase of building a business, been doing a lot of inbound marketing, so content marketing, SEO, as well as doing cold outreach, which we been just doing from day one.
And I'm on LinkedIn. It looks like you guys are a 4-person team today. Are you doing most of the sales yourself, or is it split between the?
I got to update LinkedIn. We are about, I think, 10 people today.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And so I've got a team now with I guess 2 other people in sales support roles, and I also do sales today as well. Even with my agency, I was always doing sales, even when we had like 4 people specifically in sales roles. Mm-hmm. As a founder and an owner, I take ownership of sales to some degree, because I want to know what my customers are interested in, potential customers are interested in, and be able to help better like direct how our product is going to evolve, but also know what know what these pain points are that our potential customers are having.
Yeah, something I've always found interesting. I'm going to ask you the question here. Being a founder that's still carrying a sales bag in so many ways. And I'm sure your day is not just focused on sales. You've probably got code commits and HR, operations, legal, all kinds of other, moving parts in a startup. And I've worked alongside some founders very closely who, before I came in as a dedicated seller, they were doing it all. How do you manage your week and your time? And you're also here on a podcast on a Monday, and we're here talking on a Monday afternoon on a podcast. How do you block? Do you use calendar blocks, or do you have a framework or strategy that you use to sort of block time for and bucket time for specific activities in the business? And if so, I'm sure you do. I'm throwing you a softball question here, but walk us through how you manage all of the different moving parts of a startup, while also making sure you have time to prospect and follow up on leads and those kind of things.
Yeah. So so there are a lot of distractions in the day-to-day of running a business. One good note is I am not a technical co-founder, so I don't touch code at all, which is good, because that's not a thing that anyone would want to see. But blocking time is kind of huge for me. So knowing like blocking time in each day for specific management related workflows, things I need to do to give feedback to other people, so they're not blocked from completing their own projects. Trying to like deal with like that stuff as in the morning as much as I can, as well as any like follow-ups and things like that. Also try and deal with early on in the day. In a perfect world, it's not the case, but in a perfect world, I would be like checking my email once in the beginning of the day and once towards the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And I'm not there yet, but definitely like blocking time in each day for specific activities and projects or demos and calls and things like that is really the only way I could like be able to get anything done, just because there are so many distractions in a day, and task switching is like a real cost. Jumping from one thing to another, I make sure I don't get email notifications on my desktop or anything like that, because that would be a nightmare. I would not be able to get any serious project done.
Mm-hmm. How many hours a week would you say you invest in sales motions or sales oriented activities?
I have no idea.
And is it the majority, or would you say it's sort of a 50-50 split, or does it, take up a quarter of the time?
I'd say it probably takes about, in terms of my day, let's say a quarter of the time. I also have, team members that help me in sales support roles that are doing things like prospecting and doing outreach and basically like like reviewing leads and feeding me the ones that I can take over and follow up on and things like that. But yeah, that's made my life so much easier.
Yeah. And then, for your cycles, is it, multiple calls before a deal closes, or are they not so complex? Is it typically kind of a 1 to 2 call close process? Walk us through some of those specifics. I'm curious.
Yeah, so we have a range of different customers. Some, like, we have our product has like a very self-service option, and so there are some customers we never hear from and they sign up, and that's great. Others who might be switching from another product and they want to get a demo or something, get some more specifics for related to their use case, and those typically are, I'd say there's a demo and then 2 follow-ups or something like that. But then there are larger deals and projects that will go on for dozens of conversations and go through months, the enterprise deal sort of situation, because you have to get, like, you have the person who is tasked with doing the research is not the same person who is the decision maker, or one of multiple decision makers.
Right. Much more complex, a lot more steps and tasks involved. That makes sense. Tell us the story. You had mentioned that you got into a startup accelerator, Tiny Seed. And where I think my listeners can really take away a lot of insight is, I can only imagine preparing to participate in something like that involves, getting your value proposition pitch down, your elevator pitch, if you will, rehearsing that, having a really effective slide deck, having, all of the various objections that you probably got through the, evaluation of that. Tell us how you prepared for it. Any stories you have from kind of going through I'm sure you had a demo day or a pitch day, and maybe it was several of those, but yeah, just tell us a story about Tiny Seed. And, what can we take away from that as sellers who are also preparing to get in front of prospects and executives and buyers with our presentations and our value pitches?
Yeah. So it felt very much like an enterprise sales deal kind of situation, in that there were a lot of materials that they had asked for before we even got onto a phone call. So, like, there was an application that was extensive. They asked for a copy of the pitch deck, and they had a bunch of specific questions, wanting to know about, like, financials, addressable market, competitors, things like that. And then and then hearing nothing for a while, suddenly out of nowhere, they come out and they say, "Hey, thanks for sending this. Let's schedule a call with this person." And then we had a call with someone from the Tiny Seed program. They asked us a bunch of questions about that related to our deck, related to the materials that we had sent. And, like, by that point, we were, like, in having prepared this deck, we were pretty confident in all of our answers and all the materials. And so we were really ready for it. But it very much felt like an enterprise deal, and that, like, they wanted some specifics for them. And you were like, all right, I'm creating these pieces of content and these assets that probably will not be used for other people, because this is a very specific use case here. But if it goes well, it's going to be a win. And so we also, like, in going into this, did our due diligence to know what the program was about, know other companies that were in the program. And so we had specific questions for them ready to go as well. And then we had 3 rounds of interviews, and then, like, later the same day we had our last interview, we got the offer, which was cool. But yeah, like, the whole process from start to finish took, it took about a month and a half, start to finish, before we got the term sheet, and then another 2 months before we, like, officially signed on. Like, we got the application in early January. We officially signed on as of, like, May 1st of 2021.
Is that the only fundraising you guys have done for the company, or have you raised money elsewhere also?
Yeah, it's the only fundraising that we've done. We hadn't really been looking for fundraising elsewhere. In particular, like, my co-founder and I have otherwise been bootstrapping this, because we were able to do this because we previously sold our agency and were able to
Right.
use some of the proceeds of that to help fund us. The main thing that we were really looking for in like the accelerator program wasn't just the funding, but it was the program itself and the network, getting feedback from more experienced entrepreneurs who know people who could potentially become acquirers of our
Hmm.
product,
Yeah.
things like that, or and yeah, in the last 8 months or so that we've been in the program, we've been getting just like a ton of insights that and direction that have helped us that otherwise we would have been taking forever to figure out ourselves. And I guess tying back to my earlier comment about how like reaching out to people who are more established in the field to get mentorship and advice, it's been kind of the same thing. Like even though this was our second startup venture, there are always people who are more experienced who can
Hmm.
give you some value and help point you in the right direction if you don't know where to go. And yeah, they're like the other members of our cohort, the other mentors that are running the program, just been super helpful to help us level up than without, basically.
Yeah, I was curious, how hands-on the folks over at Tiny Seed are. It sounds like they are, able to offer up referrals and things like that if they have them. Do they provide pretty consistent sort of coaching and those sort of things? I'm always curious, like with Y Combinator and Tiny Seed, and there's thousands of other ones out there.
Yeah.
And I know that they probably vary depending on the organization, but it sounds like Tiny Seed at the very least is pretty hands-on and invested in the scale of the business.
Yeah, so there are like regular like team calls where we will go over, like we'll get advice and feedback on some particular areas of running a startup, from pricing and positioning to sales, and marketing. And they're just like a ton of nuggets and insight that I've never seen in blog articles anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of in the trenches advice that I've just never heard elsewhere. Some of which I'm sworn to secrecy about, but like it's like really just like it's been crazy how much how helpful that a lot of that has been. And also like just the networking of other people in our cohort, in our group. We see other people at startups that are doing different things from us, using different technologies and bouncing ideas off each other has been just super helpful. So I guess really I would say no matter what business you're in or role you're in, having a mastermind group in particular is going to
Yeah.
be super helpful for your career. I've been in mastermind groups for, I don't know, since 2014 or so. And they've always been super helpful for me, helping me to get feedback when I'm stuck on anything, or advice from people that I want to get advice from. They're when you're running a business or anything like that, there are often people giving you unsolicited advice, but
Yeah.
I want to get advice from the people who I would want to take advice from. And so I find mastermind groups with people that are in like established or growing businesses who've done the things, hopefully, that I would hope to achieve with my business. And so that kind of feedback has been very helpful.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this, we're coming pretty close to time here, but I wanted to get one sort of big question out there.
Yeah.
So most of my listeners, it's January of 2022. And I'd say
Mhm.
the vast majority of my listeners right now are staring ahead at the year to come. There's, a complete bloodbath going on today in the stock market. There's an Omicron and some other new variant of the COVID virus. And I don't even remember what it is now.
Oh, great.
There's just all kinds of stuff going on. And, as Andreas and Harwitz said a long time ago, software is eating the world, and that continues to happen. I think we've probably gone from 10 to 20,000 SaaS startups to well beyond that. I don't have a number off the top of my head. And I think, you're someone I want to ask this question of, having started this company that's in what I think is a pretty crowded space.
Mhm.
What can we do, or what are you doing to stand out from all the noise? There's a lot of noise out there, not just from a competitive vendor standpoint, but people are focused on the economy and on, the COVID situation and the macroeconomics and all that. but also focused on, finding the right technology fit for their business in the coming year and making sure they don't make a bad decision that could, have a ripple effect later on. So I'm really curious. I think that the short version of that same question is, what are you doing to stand out from the noise? What are some things you've done to just kind of keep pressing forward and, again, stand out in somebody's inbox? Because they're probably getting, most business leaders and executives are getting probably hundreds of emails from SDRs and sellers every single day. What are some of the tricks you've used to stay relevant and stand out?
Okay, so I guess there are two questions. One's a bigger picture thing, and one is like very specific. Like bigger picture, like there are only a handful of reasons why someone buys your product. It saves them time, it saves them money, it helps them make money. Like there are like a finite number of reasons that anyone would like buys a particular product,
Right.
and buys a product over any other product. And so I want, like, if I'm trying to grow a business, I want to know what are my customers or potential customers doing now instead of using my product, and what are they not liking about the current process that they have, and like to see like what is my opportunity there to get their attention. In terms of like specifics of like the cold email that I want to send that'll stand out in someone's inbox, I've sent many emails over the years, and in particular, something that I've been really bullish on the past maybe 6 to 8 months or so that I've been doing it, is throwing humor in my cold emails. So in particular, there's one guy named John Buchan, Buchan. He is a British fella who has this course or this materials. His brand is Charm Offensive, and basically like his copy on his website was, I got really smashed drunk one night and sent a silly cold email, and I've been closing crazy deals since. And so like the pretense of these emails is, don't just like, like there are so many templates and formats for, like PAS or BAB or whatever. But you like think from the perspective of your recipient, if you're getting dozens or hundreds of cold emails a day, you can spot them. And if you can spot them, your immediate thought is, this has no new value for me. Yep. So what can you do? There are some things that you can do to stand out, being like silly, humorous, or just basically getting the recipient to pause right before they hit the delete button, get them to act like, do a double take really, before to get them to actually take a look at your contents and then reply. Some things that I've been doing that have been getting me good results. I've got a picture of me sitting next to my cat staring at the camera, and this is an image that comes in, is embedded in the email. And so it's wow. Hey Joe, I didn't hear back from you after my last email. Here is me and my cat, and in parentheses, the cat is the one on the left. We are awaiting your reply. And I've gotten a lot of replies to that just one silly thing of, most recently someone said, okay, you win. Where's your scheduler?
Nice.
Like stuff like that, like making it so it looks like this email is coming from a human and not some robot or someone with a quota who's has to send a couple hundred emails today. So yeah, just taking that approach. And I realized at some point that there is like, that if we all do this, then it's like, but it's been the same thing for everything with cold emailing. Like if we're all doing the same thing, then nothing stands out. But I found that, using humor, but also like I get people to, I share the email copy with people to get them to approve it, because I may think I'm funny. I know a lot of people think they're hilarious, but
I might have this problem.
I want to share it with people to be like, all right, does this come off as cute or obnoxious? Because I don't want it to be obnoxious. I want it to be like, oh, that's whimsical. You like just to get the person to pause as they're hitting delete, delete, delete through their inbox.
Yeah, that's huge. And I don't know, maybe 2022 is the year that the cold email finally just becomes so saturated. But I like your approach. I think you're exactly right. And I've tried to introduce humor into my whole sales process over the last couple of years, very lightly. And you have to be able to read the room too. Some people just, especially if you start dealing with some of the enterprise higher level or executive buyers, it can be a slippery slope. You don't want to assume someone's going to find you funny, like you said, and definitely get a second opinion from someone on your team as to how it might be received. But I think the only thing I would add to what you say is just this year I'm planning to pick up the phone more than I have maybe in the last couple of years, because I think one of the best ways you can build rapport with somebody is to just actually talk to them. And, there's so many cold emails going out at this point that phone is actually now a way to differentiate yourself as a prospector, because you're actually, you've got the guts to pick up the phone and, communicate your value as quickly as possible. And I think you can infuse humor into something like that also, and it can come across a little bit better. But man, it's tough looking ahead at 2022, knowing that people have a lot on their minds. Prospects are, dealing with all kinds of different business problems and, again, macroeconomic problems. But, most of us are trying to go out and add value to our buyers and trying to help them solve complex problems in their business. And yeah, I think your ideas around humor are right on point.
Yeah, it's been working well so far. And like it gets, I find that like it gets, like once it gets the engagement, there is already some rapport like it just inherently creates, because right, it's not just some salesperson pitching the benefits to this particular company. It's like connecting on a more human level of like, here is my cat, and it's like, oh, I love this cat, tell me more about this cat. I've had people who just ignore my copy and I'm like, tell me more about this cat, and then I'm like, all right, I gotta redirect eventually. But there's this aspect of building a relationship from this cold email that I think works. It's some work, but it ends up I find doing pretty well.
That's fantastic. Well, just in closing, maybe tell us how we can get in touch with you, and then remind all the listeners.
Sure.
So suppose there's somebody out there listening right now who doesn't have a prospecting automation technology in place, or something, or they're looking at something, or they have something that's not working for them. How can they reach you and learn more about what you guys are building? Or maybe there's somebody who wants to come work for you as a seller at some point in 2022. Tell us the best way to reach you and any closing thoughts you have.
So yeah, if you're looking for a new outreach tool, you can check us out at postaga.com, postaga.com. And just for this audience, if you want to try it out, we have a free 2-week trial. And if you upgrade, we'll give you 3 months at 50% off using the coupon code podcast50, podcast50.
Cool.
Besides that, you can find me. I'm pretty easy to find online. There are not any other Andy Cabassos out there. On Twitter, I'm at Andy Cabasso. On Facebook, we have a group called Grow Together SEO, which is geared towards cold outreach and link building. And on LinkedIn, I'm Andrew Cabasso, I guess because it sounds more professional.
Yeah.
And I'm not on SoundCloud yet, but I don't know. We'll see.
Awesome. Well, I'll paste a couple of links to the profiles and to the promotional offer you've got going in the podcast notes. Andy, thank you so much for coming in, sharing your story and how you're approaching 22 in terms of growing the business. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse. This is fun.